what I'm passionate about is healthy relationships, healthy communications. And I think it just starts from there.
Hey Gooby, you're now listening to Buddy Time. In today's episode, we're exploring the importance of self-value, nurturing your well-being, and unlocking the psychological tools to shape a brighter future with our guest speaker, Pim from Pimchology. Ready to turbocharge your day with us? Let's begin our voyage. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to Buddy Time, the podcast where we dive into passion, growth, and the journey that makes us who we are. Today's episode is all about self-love and self-care, explored through the fascinating world of psychology. We'll uncover how understanding your mind can influence your future, especially if you're a teenager or a young adult navigating life's challenges and changes. Take care of yourself today isn't just important. It's the foundation of a brighter and more fulfilling tomorrow. But before we dive in, let's get to know our incredible guest speaker. Her name is Pim, and we're so excited to have you with us. Pim, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Today, I'm very good. I'm very excited to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Pim. I'm a therapist. I'm a podcast host at Pimchology, and I'm a Swiftie.
So Pim, tell us about how you got to the point where with Pimchology, with like psychology, how did you end up knowing that like psychology is something that you want to step your feet into and dive into?
I was lucky enough to always know that I wanted to do psychology, but it wasn't that like I knew and I just went for it, right? Like when you're young, you kind of like want to test everything out. I went to school, first year university, I went to school for business, took an elective class in psychology. And I was like, wow, interesting. This is what I like to do. I like to listen to people. I like to know why. And I was like, okay, let's just change it. Let's figure out what's wrong with me. So I went straight into psychology. And after that, I was just looking at everything I like around psychology. There's so many ways to do psychology. There's social psychology, cultural psychology. You can do everything with psychology, like marketing. Everything is psychology, right? So I started thinking to myself, what do I want to do? And I took this sex and gender differences at UBC. So that is when I was like, oh my God, I love sex and gender differences. I love how society has influenced us and what they taught us when it doesn't really have to be true. So I'm like, okay, I got into that. And so I went into social psychology, and then I got back home. And with coming from social psychology, being so in love with it all, I'm like, okay, let's just make a difference. I went into different fields. I wanted to do more of like a nonprofit, or maybe some more political things about it, and then got my dreams washed up. Felt so lost. And then I came back to myself and I like, okay, what do you really want to do? Like, what is it that you want to do? Like, what makes you happy? And I just went back in time and just, okay, speaking to people makes me happy. Getting to share this knowledge, this point of view makes me happy. And being there for people makes me so happy. So I'm like, okay, you already have the training for being a therapist. You already did all the hours. So let's do it. So I started putting that up. I started taking one-on-one consultation online. And it was good for a while. It was really good. But I was lacking this drive of, I need to yap. I need to speak, like, I need to be heard too. I've been listening a lot. So that's how I came up with Pimchology, the podcast. It was like, okay, yap time for me.
I love that because for us with Buddy Time as well, it's our yap time. We have the things that we believe in our core of like creating a supportive community and everything like that. And we can't just create a supportive community with just ourselves. And so we wanted to yap and let people know that this is what we're doing. And hopefully this message reach like the people that are listening, right? With what was it, social psychology? Can you perhaps help explain a little bit more about what social psychology means? Because you did mention that there's so many different types of psychology. Hopefully the listeners can get a bit of a better sense of what social psychology means.
Society in general, I would say, and how people interact, communicate, and how we are so affected by the world around us. Some other psychology fields would focus more on the inside, on what's your feeling, your personality. Social psychology focuses on how you interact and communicate and have the relationship with people. So that's where my specialty lies. Communicating your feelings, healthy communications. How do you put yourself into the world and not have it thrown back in your face. And we don't know how much the world shapes us or everything around us shapes us. I read the study once back in school, and it's so crazy. We don't realize how much things around us affect us. And you look into the field of what you study, and they can predict what you would do in a simple situation. So for instance, I'm pretty sure this is the study. If you pick up money from the street, they can predict how many you're going to give away and how many you're going to keep based on your major at school, because that's how much things you learn every day affects you. And that to me was so...
That's so interesting.
Interesting, yeah. So you took business.
I took theater.
Did it? Okay. What did I think you took business? They say that psychology-wise, if you're a psychology student, you'll probably keep 50% and 50% you'll take it. Business-wise, you'll probably give a little bit away, majority to yourself, if not all to yourself, because fair game, it's on the floor. And economists the same way, theoretically, it's another thing. So it's quite interesting that all these things that you don't even know, all these little options you pick in your life leads you on a path where it shapes you so much so that you're just kind of like, oh, you can tell this about me?
Sharing this study, it makes sense to me a lot in today's world that we all uses, the technology of AI and why data collection is so important to, those powerful people, because this is exactly like what you explained. Like, for example, Amazon, they're able to predict where their customer's journey is going to be by us clicking to one of these products or just watching one of this content. They can immediately understand, digest us, analyze us to the, deepest DNA, and it suggests us what we really need. Sometimes I've heard or seen somewhere that sometimes AI or technology or businesses like Amazon, they probably know us even better than how we know ourselves, like what we really need. So it is very interesting. And to me, I've always been a fan of psychology as well. I read a lot of psychology, mental health related. Like I'm wondering, it's Carl Jung part of what you're in your study as well?
I would say all psychologists know Carl Jung. Carl Jung, Freud, everyone who even steps into one psychology class would know their foundation, and you just kind of like pick and choose which one you go with.
The reason why I brought up Carl is because I am a huge fan of Carl. Like, there's a lot of things that I practice or I believe these days, including learning about ourselves, hearing about our inner voice, reflecting a lot. But for me, it's a lot of, inner work, back to myself, attention, energy back to myself. That's how in my own belief that if we make ourselves better, that's how we can impact the people around us as well. And hearing like the way you share or what you've shared just now, social psychology is more so understanding how the world around us shape us, right? So how does that work? Like, if we're being shaped by the things surrounded by us, then does that mean we need to have more awareness in how we are being shaped, like so that we know how to find the core to what we actually like or what our passion is? Because to us in Body Up Me Goodie, one of the things that we want to promote or to help the young adult is to be able to discover your own passion and find a fulfilling life. But a lot of the time, it's hard for people to realize, what do I really like? Even you took a journey to explore what you really like, what your passion is. So yeah, like, what's your thought? If social psychology is, things, external things, but does that make self-awareness and inner work more important?
Yes and no. I would say yes, because you kind of need the self-awareness to know. Of course, reflecting is the biggest thing. And it goes back to the thing you said about Amazon, right? They know you more than we know ourselves, because our brain is very funny. It lies to us a lot. We have our defense mechanism in our brain. Our brain is not designed for us to be happy. Our brain is designed for us to survive. So a lot of the times when we tell ourselves things, it's the worst case scenario. It's the worst thing that we can say to ourselves, because that's what it wants us to do, to prepare for the worst. But it's not designed to make us happy. So we have to pause and be like, okay, brain, is this you making reality, or is this you trying to protect me? And that also works, because sometimes we lie to ourselves a lot, and it really comes back to, okay, really digging back into the experiences. Did we really feel that way? Did we really think that way? So that in a way, yes, self-awareness is very, very important. But I also believe that we go through the world and we pick up on things we want to pick up on. So you and me, we could be on the same thing, but we're going to pick up on different things. Meaning that social psychology shapes you in a way only when you yourself picks it up. So we can go through experience. It could be amazing for me. It could be anxiety-inducing for you. It could be so uncomfortable for you. And that's just what you pick up on in life. So that too is self-awareness, to come back and look what you pick up on and how you receive certain things in the world. No one receives a message the same way. We can all read the same book. We can all listen to the same song. And we interpret it differently because it's not just what the world happens to us right then and there that shapes us. It's what has happened to us our entire lives leading up to that point and what we can pick up on more.
Then I have very similar questions to Sin, because for someone who doesn't know about this, I wonder how is that different from the internal psychology of us? Because we're talking more so about social psychology of the surrounding factors that influence our decisions, right? These two, I assume it works hand in hand, right? Because you mentioned that people have to go through certain things, and that's probably more inner, right? The things that you've gone through. And then social psychology deals with the factors that are around us in the moment and how you use what you've learned to deal with the moment. Is that what you mean by what you've said, right?
It sounds more complicated than it is because we're thinking of it in very little specific details. But just for instance, social psychology is basically the world and how we react to the world and how the world has taught us different things. That's what it is for me. But basically, for me personally, I think that all fields of studies are just labels for scientific reasons, right? So I would say I'm a social psychologist because I read all these papers, all these research papers in terms of social psychology, but it alone would not work out. So I would not be able to understand anything. So at the same time, if you took marketing alone would never work out without everything else. Yeah. It's the same thing for me. It's just this one little tiny field where I read more about, but at the end of the day, you need to integrate it to everything else because we're all different parts of the world and all different parts of us would need to kind of come together to function.
Yeah. And I also really like that you mentioned something that's very thought-provoking for me, which was the brain is designed to survive and not to be happy. I want to elaborate on this term a little bit more to get a better understanding. So if our brain is wired to survive and not to be happy, they would want to, most of the time when you hear outside in society, people say, I want to be happy. How can I be happy? People don't go around being like, hey, I really want to survive. I'm about to unalive right now. Can you please let me survive? People don't say it that way. But in psychology, when we dig into it in a more educational level, it is to survive, right? But what is the relationship between this and is there a specific way for people to strive for happiness if that's what they're looking for? Or is happiness just not meant to be something that we innately achieve?
We all want to be happy, but it comes down to that's what I said, right? As in the brain wants us to survive. And sometimes it's not exclusive. You can survive and be happy, but a lot of the times you don't believe that. You just need to go. But a lot of the times people need to make a conscious decision to be happy because we pick up on bad things more so than good things. But if we look back every day, there's something that made us smile. There's something that made us laugh. There's something we're grateful for. I'm sure everyone has kind of saw journaling. So that's the biggest thing. That's why it works, because you journal only literally about 3 things that makes you smile that day, 3 things that makes you grateful that day. And that just forces your brain to not go on survivor mode and everything was shit today. And just kind of okay, I did smile because I saw a dog. I did smile because I met you today. It's just very little things that makes you happy. Being happy is not hard. It's you just have to look into it and try to make it happen again. And for instance, on days where you're not happy, and I'm sure we've all been there. I've been there where I would sit down in front of my journal, think of 3 things that made you smile today. Nothing made me smile that day. Because, of course, life does get hard and your brain does need to survive. But when you realize that well, nothing made me happy today. Tomorrow I wake up, I'm like, okay, at least I'm going to do 3 things that makes me smile today. Consciously, I'm going to smile today. And it's just part of life. Some days happiness comes easy to you because there's nothing negative for you just to survive on. It's just more on, I don't know if I'm still on topic, but it's just more, you need to kind of check on your emotions, see what's taking over you today. Because sometimes we go through life thinking that we know everything when we know nothing. And it's the same with ourselves. If we don't pause and check in with our emotions or ourselves, we know nothing about ourselves.
Hey, speaking of emotion, this is one thing that I feel like majority of the people lack these days. I don't mean like we lack emotion. What I mean is we lack the ability to realize or to accept every emotion that we have, especially the negative ones or the vulnerable ones. And if that's the case, and if the brain is naturally wired for us to go on the negative side, then it must probably, it will be a huge effort for people to make a conscious decision, right? Like you said, to make a conscious decision that I will do 3 things that make me happy today. But how can we get to that stage? Like, it needs a lot of push. Like, yeah, if without you, let's say without a therapy telling me that, hey, you have this problem, suggestion is for you to do journaling and to start writing 3 things, then maybe I will follow. But without anyone, without any guide, I would probably be lost somewhere. This is what I'm imagining for, the majority of the people out there who don't have or who's not aware of things like this.
Survive. Okay, like I said, surviving and being happy does not have to be one or the other. A lot of times I say this when people are doing their negative roundabouts in their head. A lot of the time, our brains, a lot of people do find it easy to be happy and do find it easy to live that life because our brain does not have to always be negative. Surviving does not always have to be negative. Some people, surviving simply means that I don't want to suffer. And we see that a lot in people who just enjoys life. Or in another way, but so many things can be true, right? I cannot want to be in the negative feelings. So my brain is choosing to survive with only happiness. So I neglect my own feelings. It depends on the person. And it comes back to you asking me, what do we do if we just want to be happy? It's a hard question.
It is.
Because it depends on the person. And
everybody asks this question a lot. Like, I want to be happy. How do I do it? But it's so different for everybody, right?
I think for me, if it's a starting point, you need to know what makes you happy. So have you heard of the dopamine menu? So it's this new thing. I saw it on TikTok, so it must be true, right? So it must be true. So a dopamine menu is basically you knowing what makes you happy, you making a list of all the things that makes you happy. My dopamine menu is not your dopamine menu or your dopamine. We know what dopamine is, right? Okay. So when you make the dopamine menu, you kind of see what actually really makes you happy, kind of coming up with that list, kind of you understand yourself more, what you like. And sometimes once you make the list and you start doing it, that one thing you really thought makes you happy is really not on the menu. And it was just a special of last season. So it's okay for our dopamine menu and things that makes us happy to change, because some things are always going to be on the menu. Some things are just specials. And I think that's where you start, really knowing what makes you happy and truly knowing that it still makes you happy. For me, what I believe in is that a lot of the times we find ourselves when we're younger, we figure out the things we like when we are younger. And then when we're sad now, today, we go back to what we believe in that we like and that helps us 3 years ago. And we're a different person now. So that self-care, that dopamine rush, it's not the same. So today you come back and you're like, what actually makes us happy today? What activity feels us today? It's just amazing how much we grow each year, each day, each week, that we do have to come back and really think about what is it that we like? What is it that makes us happy? Because like I said, menu changes and we changes. Yeah.
Do you personally keep track of your dopamine menu?
It's so new. It's on TikTok, right? Yeah. I only made one.
Because I only just knew you today. I think at least for both of you, I feel like there's one dopamine menu that will always be on the list, which is Taylor Swift.
Taylor Swift is always going to be on the list for me. But I think that's also another thing. If we want to be happy, we do need inspiration. So maybe something that inspires you. For me, it's Taylor. Always going to be Taylor. And my dogs. I love my dogs. So it really depends on who you like, what you like, things that makes you so happy that that's all you need to do, turn on Long Live while you're driving.
Totally that. I feel it in my veins just speaking of it. I wonder, because we're talking so much about like the concept of happiness, and I'm sure that happiness is so different from everybody. That's why we mentioned about journaling. That's why we mentioned about dopamine menu, which to me, now that I'm reflecting it, it's similar, right? Like journaling, you're writing down the moments, and dopamine, you're also reflecting on moments that makes you happy. So I'm wondering, like, do you have, as a psychologist yourself, is there a definition of happiness that you could pinpoint? Because sometimes I'm asking because I also know some people who cannot really identify, like, or self-reflect happiness. They just find it really hard to be happy, even though we're doing happy things. So they're just like, I just can't be happy. And just like you've mentioned way back in our conversation just now about how situations are interpreted very differently with people. Is there a specific way to define happiness once someone feels it? Is there a way for them to, more so people who can't identify happiness, for them to grasp the understanding of like, oh yeah, I was happy in that moment? Maybe like, because some people can't even have that realization like, oh, I was happy. Do you have that sort of definition?
If someone asked me that question, I'll be like, is the reason for you to define happiness so hard because your happiness depends so much on other people and not yourself? So that's a very real thing now. It's very real, because if happiness comes from within, which is the hardest thing to do, because we're taught, especially we're Asian, we're taught to please. We're taught to go outside for happiness. We're taught to go outside for validation. But that's not consistent, that's not sustainable, that's not healthy, right? So for me, happiness is, you need to understand that where is your happiness right now? What makes you happy? And a lot of times people will be like, someone clapping for me, my mom is okay, I can do something for someone to be happy, which is great. But what are you lacking in that list? You can never not have someone else validate your happiness. Happiness needs, if you want to find easy happiness must come from you.
As we chat through this podcast, it's only been like, a short moment. A lot of the things that you share, we were sharing, just now, it's just so, what word should I use it? It's just so nice, like nice in a way that, because it aligns with a lot of my beliefs as well. It aligns with, I really, really see. This is where I'm going to bring in the spiritual part that I believe. To me, I never really view spirituality as something extremely magical, but it's more so a way of lifestyle that we choose to go in. And that lifestyle have a lot to do with our inner self, our self-reflection, self-discovery, self-love. And all of that actually can be supported by, like psychologies, by the things that you shared just now. And they all aligns with this, let's say, for example, Buddhism's philosophy, or even if not Buddhism's philosophy, with a lot of other practices or belief as well. I'm not going into the extreme side, but more so in general, the things that I believe in the spiritual way, it's very, very much about self-reflection, self-discovery, self-love, even from the conversation just now, the key takeaway that I get out of it is that everything just have to be refocused back to ourselves. If we want to find happiness, like you said, we have to understand, where did this happiness come from? Are we relying this happiness on external factors, or does it come from ourselves? Like, this is already a first step to understanding who we actually are, right? But the sad thing that I also realize as we speak is also because, again, it's just I'm probably viewing this in a bit of a more negative perspective, that most young adults these days are not able to do self-reflection or to understand who they actually are, and most of them, in my opinion, rely heavily on the external factor to make themselves happy, to get a lot of validation for their so-called successfulness. So I would like to ask Pim, because you share a lot of amazing contents on your channel as well, Pimchology, right? And you touch on the ones that I've seen are mostly on relationship. About we share something from relationship first. Like, in relationship, there's a lot of like toxic relationship, not just between couples, family as well, friends as well. Is there first question is, do you think that in today's world, especially with young adults or teenagers, toxic relationship is a more common thing?
I think not in today's world too. In life, toxic relationships are way more common in younger generations, or young teenagers, young adults. But here's the thing, we learn through mistakes, right? Like you said, so we learn through mistakes and then we know. Why is it that younger generations look for outside validation? When did we all start looking inside for our validation? When we've already explored everything on the outside. So when you're young, it's so common, it's so fun, it's so vibrant for you wanting to go outside, to have so many friends. And then one day it's just like, okay, we're done with that. We just need to start looking inside. For me, it's just the amount of mindfulness where you go in and you're like, okay, this is no longer serving me. Happiness as when you're young and exploring the world outside of you, learning so much from the outside is great. It's just when it's time or it's too much, or when you start losing your sense of self, that you need to be able to pull yourself back in. Because if you start from the inside since 10, you've never learned anything from the world, then you're kind of like created your own world, right? Now you're a bit delulu, like, are you for real? Right? Like, realistically now, because you kind of like need to understand the world. Like, when you're young and you're growing up, you're building the world. You're thinking about what is real. So you see that people who interact more, who gets out more, are kind of like, okay, เข้าใจโลกมากขึ้น, like kind of like understanding what's going on. And then people who don't are just kind of like more reserved and they take more time. And that's just life. So basically, what I want to say is, if you're young and watching this, try everything you want to try. Be whatever you want to be.
Even drugs?
Did not come from me. Came from Sony. I think that the important part is learn from your mistakes and just kind of like move on. Don't let it define you. Don't let all these things kind of like be the definition of you. You are in your learning stage. The more you try, the more you go out, the more you kind of like, see what's good and what's not good for you. You don't know what's not right for you until you've tried it. You don't know that a relationship is toxic until you went through a toxic relationship. I can say all I want about a toxic relationship. Someone who's never been through a toxic relationship would be like, I would have left it 2 minutes in. But that's not true, right? Like, you don't know until you went through it. So for me, yes, younger kids do go through more toxic relationship because we don't know better. But that's fine. That does not mean that you're not smart. Does that mean that you're weak? No. Going through it makes you human. I've been through it. Have you? You know? And it's fine. And it's fine as long as we're able to pull ourselves back and get ourselves out of it. That's all that matters.
It's very interesting, and I don't know where I'm leading up to this particular point right now. It's just a seed that's in my mind. But I feel like there's a lot of debate that we could technically do in terms of a toxic relationship if we're using this as an example. Because you know how when you're like a friend of like a couple, both of them are viewing each other like, well, it's their fault. Like they did that, and then the other one's like, no, it's their fault. They did that, and then you hear everything, and then you're just like, oh yeah, like toxic relationship is sometimes not like one way or the other. And I've also had some people who are in a relationship where they're like really in love with someone, but the other person is like fell out of love, and then they're like, yeah, that person's really toxic. But again, like toxicness again, like it's really hard to quantify like whether or not something is toxic for you. Sometimes you don't even know it until it happens on you, until the moment in your life to find a toxic relationship. It's really hard because what is toxic? Like if I don't feel good in it, it's unfair for me. Is that toxic already? Like not that they did anything wrong, but I just feel like this. I can pull anything out of the air about someone and just be like, I don't feel well about that. It's toxic. Like that could also be a thing. So it's hard to really quantify that. Like when people say that it's toxic, you know what I'm saying?
I've been thinking about this too, because people throw around toxic and abusive like crazy, like
so chill. They're just toxic. I'm like so chill. They're just like toxic. I'm like, but when I'm friends, like, maybe because my views is very different because they're together. But when they are doing the same thing to me, I don't feel like it was a toxic thing. And then they start having this dispute between them just because of this small thing. And I'm like, but I don't view it as a bad thing. I think you're viewing it as a bad thing. And then they create a whole scene out of it.
Sometimes we don't get what we want and we label it toxic.
Sorry, then does that make us toxic too, because we label that as toxic because we didn't get what we want, right?
Toxic depends on what we do, like toxic. Okay, for me, my definition is, what is a toxic relationship? A toxic relationship is when the other person, friend, boyfriend, whatever, kind of like brings out the worst in you, the very worst in you. So you act like the person you don't want to be. You act like you're no longer aligning with the person you truly are. You're going out of character. It's very toxic. It's sad, basically. But in a way, some people just don't get what they want, and it's toxic because out that side, kind of like you kind of want what you want, right? And I think that's hard. That's a big self-reflection. So basically, that's what I would say. Wow, toxic is not that you don't get what you want. Toxic is when someone really brings the worst out of you. And a lot of the times, toxic relationship is both ways. You also make them feel that way, which is different from an abusive relationship. An abusive relationship is actually when they're actually so horrible to you. Abusive from parents, abusive from your boyfriend, girlfriend. You feel worthless. You don't feel like you have a choice. You feel alone. Now you're feeling so little. That's an abusive relationship. Toxic relationship for me is just you two are not good for each other. Leave. Right? Like, or yeah, your boss is a very toxic person because he's just gaslighting you all the time. But again, it comes back to, is it abusive? Is it toxic? Very, very distinct to me. Not easy to distinct it, but it's different. And a lot of the times I do want people to really kind of like think about it when they want to throw around the word toxic relationship. Because if we throw these words around so much, it's going to lose its meaning. And people, it's going to be like the boy who cried wolf, toxic. It's going to become something like no one's going to care about it anymore. It comes back to self-reflection. Like for me, is it toxic or is it me not getting what I want? And it's okay. Of course, we're human. We're going to be mad if we don't get something we want. I want love. You're not giving me love. Well, oh my God, what an awful person. Yeah. Of course, but then he's not really toxic. He just doesn't love you anymore. And that's just life. But of course, hate him. You're hurt.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to be like, oh, I'm so better than this. It's hard to get to that point. Feel what you feel. And just accept that, okay, he's not toxic. You're just mad. And you're just very sad and you're very hurt. That's just the underneath emotions, right? But it's hard for people to get in touch with these emotions. A lot of times I see people saying, I think he's toxic because it's so
Easier to blame.
yeah, and it's easier to label your thoughts. I think he's toxic. I know he's toxic. I think that this is bad for me, rather than really rooting down and be like, I'm sad, I'm scared. Because a lot of time when you say I feel หรือ รู้สึกว่า if you really listen, it's all thoughts. It's never feelings.
I feel a lot. I'm reflecting a lot now.
Does that also sort of like reflect on how people are not willing to accept our own feeling or emotion or vulnerability? Because we just tend to, like Sony say, blaming on external factor is much easier, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. People don't. Why would you want to? It's so hard when the easy way is to blame everyone else. But then that comes down to also happiness would be harder because everything else is upon every other person. There's this thing in psychology where it's about locus of control. Internal locus of control is this is because of me. I get it. You know that you control your life. The outer locus of control, external, is that everything happens to me. If I can describe it in a little sentence, it's like I let the world happen to me or I happen to the world. So you kind of get to pick and choose which mindset you want. And then your control comes back to you. And you know what you're in control of. Like, for instance, the toxic relationship. You can't control the other person if she wants to love you or not. What you can control is how you accept this. If you are going to, move on or lash out in an angry setting or try so hard for him or her to be in love with you again, these are all in your control. None of these things is wrong. You can go about it anyway, but you can't force someone else to love you. So you kind of like, I'm going to try for him to come back and love me, but I can't control if he loves me or not. And that's your control. You've done everything you can. If he comes back, he comes back. If he's not, he doesn't. He doesn't. But you can't be like, you don't get it. You know, like that's locus of control.
And yeah, I love the locus of control. I think it's a great like theory technique to use to, if you don't know what to do with your mind, that's a perfect way to make it into a systematic way of thinking. Like, what do I do to the world? What do the world do to me? And it makes it easier to, I think, digest information that we feel. And this particular conversation is making me think because we're using a lot about like a very common like A to B relationship, right? Like A person and a B person like loving each other. Since we are talking about the world right now in terms of how it's changing, I'm sure that I'm sure that it's always been like this, but now with the advancement of technology and also how people are more easily connected with each other, I feel like the relationship environment has been changing throughout the times. And nowadays, I feel like there's a lot of relationship problems because there's now more labels for different types of relationships, like open relationships or complicated relationships or roommate relationships or, like all these like different types of relationship that's happening. And like with your experiences as a psychologist and perhaps meeting your clients and all these people, have you seen this sort of change in people's attitude towards love, towards relationship? Has more things like this started to come up and bother them? Because the previous examples that we've been given are more so just really typical, like me A to B, right? Like this person happens to be cheating, but while they're in an open relationship, so it's not cheating and it's this and that. So what is toxic anymore? It's so hard to label because we agreed on it, but then it's not because of the labels and everything like this. So have you seen any sort of changes within the love aspect of people these days?
Okay, let's just start with we agreed on it to be an open relationship, but now you cheated and I feel bad. It's okay for you to renegotiate certain aspects of your relationship. You thought you were going to be okay. Now you're not. Say it. Negotiate it. And again, locus of control. You have to voice up what you are feeling and you're no longer okay with it. He does not have to be okay with it. He's like, I was fine with it. That's something you must take into account, right? Like, renegotiate it. It's fine. But if you ask me about do relationship change, it's really hard because I work with a lot of Thai people locally. We're in Thailand, right? Do you know we have the highest cheating rate in the world?
Really?
This is not from me, okay? But like my Brazilian friends are like, oh, Brazilians cheat a lot. Even when they're in marriages, they just like, what you call it? Divorce. Sorry. I was like, de-marriage?
Unmarried?
De-marriage themselves, they divorce. Like, and it's a very common thing that people do in Brazil. So, but then that's about marriage and everything. I don't know if it's about cheating, but they divorce. The divorce rate is really high. So I'm surprised to hear that Thailand has the one of the highest cheating rate.
We don't get divorced, we just cheat.
Yeah. Yeah, like you haven't even got married, but then that's, I guess,
like
better.
That's so crazy. So crazy. Like at least the Brazilian, they get divorced, right? Thai people cheat. So I'm just going to say this. It has been rooted in Thai society that cheating is okay, especially by men. Women, not so much. Men, do it. It's an ego thing. It's something people are like, oh, and, you know, it's something that's cool. It's something you boast about to your friends. Women, Thai girls, were taught to be okay with it. A good wife is a wife at home who does not complain if her husband wants to go out and have some other woman. That's just something we just believe in.
What is the reason behind this? Do you know?
Patriarchy. Think about it. It's I think now we're going to in a more feminist way. I think that Thailand feminism, sexism is very different from the trend we see in the world. You would see unequal pay. You would kind of see women not being ahead of the household. In Thailand, it's very different because the woman holds all the financial things. So if as long as the husband comes home with money, she gets to keep it. And these are all like, I've read this, right? It's coming out of my ass. just so no one comes at me. This is not something I came up with. I read it. And that's why it's different. It looks different and we fight it differently. We as a society hides it really well. So if we have a very misogynistic society, why do people clap? Because that's what all the men in power does and do. Or, you know, like you kind of see it in older figures, in powerful figures. You kind of like made it when you're an older man with a wife at home, but you have like, you know, some younger girls on your arms. It's clapped for. It's you're rewarded for it, and it's just how the system works. So back to the relationship questions. Do I see this in Thai culture? Like, I don't think it changed. I think it has always been this way. And cheating wise, with social media, it just makes it easier. People just do it easier and just kind of like have an easy way to do it. So before, if we go back in time, they would have to go out and find someone to cheat with, blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, they don't leave their bed. They're that one click and Tinder is on your phone, you know?
One click and you've cheated.
Literally. So easy, you know?
Beforehand, you have to do this whole thing where you send a pigeon and a letter and like let them receive and send it back. But nowadays, you just click it out and you cheated.
At least before, you need the audacity of planning to cheat. Now you don't even need to plan.
That's why, that's now I understand where, you know, the Mia Noi come from. Like I've heard about
it in there.
No, I just want to like share it because I've been hearing. I don't hear this a lot, but I definitely throughout my life in Thailand when I go out with some of my when I was in some of the occasions with my parents, other friend, like senior friend, I've overheard, you know, the phrase of Mia Noi. Like, I've never really understand, like, why is this Mia Noi thing happening? Like, can people just accept it? Because I hear, you know, like, ladies chatting on, like, oh, like, oh,คนนี้ Mia Noi, like, something like that. It sounded very common. So, now it makes sense, like, the way you explain it, the way you share it. Okay, I think I understand where the Mia Noi thing come from.
You know how they say that each language has different words, more words for things that they're common with. Think about how many words Thai has for Mia Noi. Mia Noi, กิ๊ก เด็ก ลูก น้องสาว คนคุย.
Oh, wow.
That's
I thought about that.
Right? And that's just all the thingsคนดูแล. You know,
that sounds like, you know, a good thing. Caretaker.
Right? Yeah.
to me, I feel like you're able to pull out interesting points where people can resonate, especially on relationship part. Is there a reason for why you chose to share this particular point and it resonates with people, or is it something that you just want to educate people?
In my family, in like, just like people around me. And it's just also social psychology. It's just something I know. And I think that it's just the first thing I reflect on the most and something I'm very passionate about. What I'm passionate about is healthy relationships, healthy communications. And I think it just starts from there going onwards, and just where I picked up to start talking about. It just so happens to be like the first few episodes, and I enjoy it. People enjoy it. And I think relationship is a big thing in Thailand. It's a big audience and people need someone who understands them. And I do.
Just since we're on the topic of like your podcast as well, and you've said that it's like relationship is something that you started off and then you jump right into it because it is something that's very prominent in Thai society. People love talking about it. It's very true. We've actually written down like 3 main things that we think that Thai people love talking and love hearing about the most, which is, first of all, love is something that they love hearing and talking about. And then the other 2 things that we've also listed that we could also touch upon a little bit is the concept of like career, like how do I find like a job that fits me, which is really so much so the essence of what Buddy Time is about as well, like finding yourself, finding your passion. How did we end up doing the things that we're doing now? And then the third point that we reflected and think that the society really talks about a lot is the concept of wealth. Like Thai people love the concept of lottery, and like they love to go buy all the lotteries, and then they wait, and then they're like, I'm gonna get this, but then they don't, and then they do it again. It becomes an addiction and things like this. So with all these topics, I'm wondering like what are some of the topics that you are planning to do and also perhaps already done that that you think that is really prominent within the Thai society right now?
I haven't thought about wealth at all. For career-wise, I've, of course, done a few with passion. What I can say on here shortly is that career-wise, you just need to really dissect it down and think about it, what you really want from life, right? Your passion, your love does not always have to be your income. So there's 2 types of jobs. A job you love going to and is your identity, and which is that the route I took. It's my identity. I'm so proud of it. Or you just go to a job that you just do what you do, so you get an income that fuels what you want to do. Both are fine. Your job does not have to be your identity. People do enjoy their 9 to 5 because it gives them flexibility. It gives them, it's stable, and you can take time off. You can go have time with family. Both things are great. I think we're so immune with the internet telling us that you have to be passionate. Your job is your identity. No, you don't have to. Like, honestly, I don't want it to be, but I just, but like, it makes me happy. If I could be less intense on my career being what I love the most, I would probably just also love having a 9 to 5 and just, okay, I'm off the next 2 weeks, right? It depends on what you want. So you don't have to stress yourself out from what the internet tells you to do. Life is so different. Really dig into what you want with life. Do you want a job that you're proud of? Amazing, go that route. Or do you think you enjoy traveling and you just like time off and you like vacation? Okay, go for a more stable career drive and just stick with it. And that's fine too. And I think that's like a big career thing I would want to touch upon.
I think coming from a person who really is deep-rooted in, I would say, I consider myself deep-rooted in the arts, that's something that I think a lot of artists like myself have to combat in their lives, because artists don't make a lot of money. But then artists like me are born with passion, a really big hunger for something that they want to do for themselves, even if that means that financially it's not the biggest reward. So with my mom also said exactly the same thing, like your career can be something that you don't have to be necessarily passionate about. I'm not talking about my current job, but it's just a teaching, because I would say that that's a way to also alleviate stress, right? Because just like Pim, you said, your job doesn't have to be your passion, because some people strive so much, I love this, I must do this. They end up making themselves so unhappy And hearing that again, it's really like a reminder, because I used to always just strive to do only the things that makes me happy. And it ends up making my options so limited that I end up being so unhappy with what I choose to do, because, I have a lot of things that could lead somewhere great, but I choose to refuse that because at the get-go, it's not what I want. It's like, that doesn't make me happy right away. I'm not doing it. So it becomes this sort of like debate in my head. And just to also mention, I'm really grateful for all the opportunities that came, right? That I've refused. But I've slowly, from that point onwards, I've also learned about the environment, like the environment that I'm in. It taught me like exactly this, like everything that you do in your life doesn't have to be your passion. You can do the passion on the side. There's always a pros and cons. There's always something that will be let go, like opportunity cost, if we're talking in the business terms, right? Like things that you gain, you lose a certain thing as well. And to me, it's just, how do I change my mindset to know that the things that I'm gaining is much more valuable than the things that I've let go, right?
And that there's a lot going on now in my brain. It's when we talk about passion or looking for our passion. Well, again, it depends on how we define passion, right? If we define passion as something that we're happy to do, that we're proud of doing, of course, everyone wants to achieve that level. This is what I've been recently thinking as well, like sort of like thinking, analyzing as well. If we know about, the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, that's how I would describe it.
I'm like, what? What? Okay. Yeah, keep talking.
So there's this pyramid chart where the foundation of it is basic needs, humans' basic needs. For example, food and drink. I would consider money as well, right? Yeah, and then as we go up the top of the pyramid, things will be changing. So from what I remember, the lower part of the pyramid are more so the foundation or the basic needs or the things that we need to survive. But the upper part of the pyramid is more so the things that I would consider more like luxury stuff, or emotion or happiness. That doesn't really involve with our survival. Yeah. So if I were to use this pyramid to explain, the things that we were discussing just now. Yeah. If we're using this to talk about the things we were discussing just now, I would say that it makes sense, right, for people to want to, let's say, look for a stable job first, because that's their way to survive, and maybe that will give them some kind of happiness. But does that happiness align with what they truly passionate about? Maybe not yet, but it definitely achieve what, a priority, right? Their current priority first. And maybe that's how we as a human being grow as well, right? If we're able to achieve the foundation part, not worry about the basic needs anymore, then that gives us the privilege to look for something more luxury. Like that's how I would, describe the thing. I don't know, what's your thought on this?
Yeah, so looking at the hierarchy, I love this theory. Basically, the bottom part is anything physical, so food, water, air, and then it goes up to safety needs, so money, stability, and employment, insurance, health, property, and then it goes up, and it's love and belonging, so that's where your passion is, and then once you have that, your self-esteem is great, and then you're happy, right? So we just need to meet the needs, and it's okay that you tick off one by one. And I want to note that a lot of the times when you have something you love so much, passion is something you're pretty good at, and it's something you love. But when your passion becomes your job, yes, it's just a fact of life. If as an artist, an actor, becomes your job, and then you're living paycheck by paycheck, and now you have to take every role you have to take. It's not as fun as it is. You're gonna love it less. It's just a fact of life. So you must make sure that you love it so much. You can't just love it 100%, because if it comes down, it'll be 60%. You have to love this thing 150% for it to come down.
Curiosity. Have you ever met people who doesn't love anything? What would you say to these people? No, I'm serious. Like, it just came into my mind because it's hard for me to conceive, because as a person, I have a lot of things that I identify. Like, I like this. I love that. I have a lot of, what was it again? The menu? The dopamine. The dopamine menu. The dopamine menu. I can list quite a few things. But I also know people who cannot write any. Like, what do you say to these people?
I would say there's two types of people I would think of when you ask me that question. And it's very different, right? One would be the type of people who has been suppressed for so long. Like, maybe their parents has always been like, you must like this, or like they're growing up where their feelings were never validated, or once they started feeling, they're punished for it. Like, if, for instance, a kid wants to do piano or anything, and their parents are like, oh, why more money? Like, they kind of like not want anything. So every time they want to be happy or they want to set out to do something, it's always been met with like, no. So they'd rather not want to do anything. That's one. The other one, psychopath, right? Very different. Feeling the same. It comes. Why psychopaths don't love anything.
Yeah.
And that's why they do all the things they do, because they're psychopathic.
Yeah. I love how that whenever I come up with really random thoughts in my head throughout our discussion, you can just like throw it right back with examples. I love it. I know it's making me really reflect on a lot of things, and that's why you're a professional.
I try. I think I've really like dug in deep with all these things, and I've really thought through it. I love my field, and I think it shows. I love my job, and I think it shows. And I'm happy to be here. I'm happy someone asked me these questions, right? Because I have all these thoughts in my head, and no one ever wants to know it.
As well, as a psychologist, I'm sure this is something that I always have a question about as well. You listen to a lot of people's like stories. You listen to a lot of, basically you take on a lot of their baggages that they have within life. Is there ways, first question is like, is that something that you love about the job? Like, or does this make you feel a certain way about the job? Being able to, or not being able to, but taking a lot of those like baggages, because that's a part of your job, right? And the second thing that I have on my mind, which is also a curiosity, is how do you manage with these baggages? Because it's easy for someone to throw something heavy at you, but it's hard to be the one carrying it all the time.
Okay. There's different type of therapists, and people, so all therapists goes about it differently, I would say. So everyone practices differently. So you say you're a therapist practicing because everyone's going as they go, right? So I would say how I do it is I enjoy it. I love my job. I love talking to people. I love being able to like help them or just kind of like understand them. I think that I love being that space where people can come to and just say. And so I'm grateful for that job. I love. As to how do I release it all? I think for me, I carry them all around, bits and pieces. But how I let go, I think that's where we've all been trained, and we all have ways. Different people do different things. I have my rituals of how I let go of things, and how one of the biggest thing is the locus of control. I realized that my locus of control is offering help and just being there for them. I cannot make them do what they want to do. If they go outside of my therapy session and repeat their whatever it is that they come in for, it's okay that they do that, but they're still coming in, and I can still give them the best advice, still be there for them. Sometimes it's heavy. You come out of a session and it's so heavy, and you just kind of have to sit there and just kind of like really go through your train of thoughts and process and self-reflect again. Okay, what can I do? How can I let go? Journaling helps me a lot. And making notes of all the sessions, because I feel like sometimes we keep so much feeling, so much thoughts in our head. And it's just like our battery is there and it's draining. So I have a journal, or I put it down somewhere, and it's like me taking all those information, putting it on a piece of paper. I save it there, and it's no longer in my head. That's how I feel. And I think that's how I kind of like train myself to think that way.
Another question on top of this, which I think it will be quite useful for the general people as well, which is using your case as an example, right? Because of the nature of your career, you're exposed to all kinds of energy or emotions, and you have to find ways to release that. Is there a way, because in our daily life these days, we receive millions of information every second, especially through social media, which in my opinion, we're more easily to be affected. How do we differentiate whether what we're feeling is what we're actually feeling, or this feeling is just a thought, or what we're feeling is just projected.
Society.
Like, is there a way we can, help ourselves to differentiate?
I don't think there's an easy way, sadly. But for me, with the best mindset I've ever gotten from all my years is that I realize now that most things said and done are opinions and not fact. We take in everything as if they're facts, right? And most of the times it's all opinion. You can be arguing about the same thing and there's two opinions and both can be true. And it's fine. And so it's just kind of like, for me, it's the mindset of like, okay, everything can be true at once. There's not something that's like really black or white. And even in the same psychology thing, there's going to be a psychologist out there or a therapist out there who is listening to this episode and is like, I don't agree with her. And that's fine. It can be true for you. It can be true for me. And that's okay. And I think that's the biggest mindset going into everywhere, kind of like really knowing that, okay, that's you. Okay, that's you. Okay, this is me. And it's okay to learn from these things, but you pick and choose. And I think going through life, the biggest thing is being mindful, being aware, and kind of like being rooted in yourself to like, okay, really knowing what you want for yourself and kind of discovering yourself as you go. Because life is a journey at the end of the day. It's such a journey. You keep on learning. I sit here, it looks like I have a question to every answer you throw out. But I at the end of the day, I feel like I know nothing, right? Like, and that's just life. And if you feel like you know nothing, it's fine. No one knows anything. Like,
but I know a lot from what you say. It's itching me to really bring this up, even though I didn't want to bring it. Well, it's itching me because, okay, so it's a great topic, I think, because what you brought up as well, at the end of the day, it's just opinion that's thrown. Like, I don't know, these days, or people in general take things too much to the heart and as facts. So an example I want to bring up is recently, we also did a collaboration with a content creator on our podcast. They have their own content creation and we have our podcast, and we filmed it at the same time. And a lot of discussions just like this episode has been discussed through in lengths, right? But as the format of like, social media formats, things are cut short. Things have to be like, you have a lot of things you want to say, maybe like an essay long, but you want to concise it into like a 1 minute thing or even less, like 15 seconds, so that people get the gist of what it is. Because again, marketing is a thing that we have to consider as content creators ourselves. So I understand in that part. But what I'm trying to get at is like throughout our whole conversation there was a piece of information that I've shared myself, which I still personally believe in very much. It is my identity and what I grew up like experiencing. I don't want to get into too much of a detail of what that particular content is, but in short, it sort of blew up online, and now there's like hundreds of thousands of views. And but a lot of the things that there were positive and also negative comments that were shared, but that was one of the first times that I've experienced a lot more negative comments in the content itself that really affected me in the moment, in a very negative sense, because I felt like I was gaslit to the point that a lot of people were saying like, oh, it's not true, it's just your opinion. Like, it was to the point that I was even messaged privately, being demanded to make myself clear, to come up with another content to like correct myself. And then I sat there thinking like, what I said, was it that wrong? Like, does the whole community, society think that that's wrong? But why do I feel like Like, that's my opinion. Like, I believe in that, but I'm gaslit to the point that they make me feel like I need to apologize. I need to be someone else that I'm not, and that really got to my head for that few days that went out. I would say that's still till today, it's still picking up a lot of traction. A lot of people, whether it's positive or negative, has still been commenting on that. But this particular talk really reminded me of that. Like, it makes me feel validated in some sense as well, that we all share opinions and our experiences of life. And by the way, I meant no harm in the things that I've said in that video. And there's a lot more things that were not part of that video that was cut out because of the purpose of like marketing as well. And I feel like people tend to think negatively first on things, and they take things more so as a fact right away and forget about opinions, that people's opinions, in my opinion, can be different. And it's just a matter of communicating those opinions that really makes us a better human, right? And to me, that is one of the biggest takeaway of our conversations today as well. I am a huge person in conversation, and I appreciate hearing that because I actually really resonate with what you said, and about yapping and about communication. Because at the end of the day, for me, what I've picked up is whether or not you view the world negatively or positively or however you view the world, at the end of the day, it's how you take the communication. Because for me, you can view the world negatively, but I can still understand you if you take the time to communicate those negative views, perhaps, that you have. And I am a firm believer of communication, just like, how we communicate and what we communicate. I feel like we should be more open. And at the end of the day, even if ideas are different, it's okay. We learn from each other because we need different ideas to learn. If we all think the same thing, if we all love Taylor Swift, then we all love Taylor Swift. Like, great, come vibe with me. But like, it's not like that. Like, in the world, I've also met people who don't like Taylor Swift, and that's okay. Like, that's totally fine. Except for those who don't love and then now love and then not okay.
Me too. Okay, I'll go off topic first.
Yeah.
And then I'll come back. When I meet someone who does not like Taylor Swift, especially men, and they go out of their way to tell me that they hate Taylor Swift, I immediately go misogynist. That's my telltale, and that's probably who I am. But that's just what. Okay, now back to the other thing. I felt the need to bring that up. I felt the need to bring that up because that's how I am. If someone feels the need to tell me that they hate Taylor, I'm like, why are you being disrespectful?
Yeah, and the part where I'm getting like hate comments in that content, I felt like Reputation Taylor. I understood what she was going through, from that point. Yeah. I was like, wow, it's so hurtful, even if they don't mean it. Even there's people out there as well who just like typing things because it's fun.
Yeah.
Like, there's also that, like internet heroes, right? Like, I'm like, you don't have to. Like, we can disagree in a professional way. You don't have to make someone feel horrible about themselves just because you don't agree with me.
And one opinion or one action or whatever one of those things is does not define who someone is. People go, this 30 seconds of Sony on our screen is Sony, and he is this, that, blah, blah, blah. It's not. He is not. It's the same way, like I say that, they don't like Taylor Swift, they're a misogynist. It's not true. I know it's not true, right? Like, they don't have to be. They just don't like Taylor, but I go that way because that's just how I'm. But I come back, I'm like, it's not true. People think that they think that they know everything a lot of the times, just kind of like, it's just how the world works. You see one clip and you think that this one action just defines this person. And it's just so much easier and louder to hate. People who like something online, press the heart. People who hates, comments 3 times and then tags their friends to conversation as well. Right? Like, it's easier to hate. And what I always say is that to get something done and to say something and to have a product come out is so much harder than already looking at a product and critiquing it. Critiquing is easy. To get everything done is hard. So for you to even say it, to come up with that, to post it, to get it there, so hard. So many things come to it. Everything is not perfect. It's going to be so easy for you to go online, see something not perfect, and tell them to improve it. But they've already done so much, and that's fine. But just be nice about it, right? Like, don't be mean. And it's easy to hate. It's loud to hate. And like Taylor says, you know, like when the truth comes out, it's quiet.
I love a good method.
Because like you hate so loudly, and then once you hate, and then you...
Once the truth is out there and maybe your opinion is not what it seems, where are you now?
Yeah.
Come back.
And not everything you say or someone says is a fact. Most of the time, it's just an opinion. It's okay to have different opinions. There's so many ways to discuss things in the world. And it's so much fun to have a conversation and discuss things when you're logical and you're able to handle it. You know, it's not fun when you're arguing with someone who's like, da, 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 da. It's not fun. And you don't want to be that person. And I strongly believe that if you have nothing nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Curious to know as well, since you've I would say just started your Pimchology channel as well, as a psychologist that's coming up with these contents as well and sharing your own opinions and your thoughts and your experiences with the world, have you ever stopped yourself or feel like you were afraid or frustrated that something that you were to share would be perceived wrongfully in the society?
Just even starting it. Like I think I told you, I don't know if I said it from the podcast, I took 2 years for it to really come out and be what it is now. And 1 year, 8 months was me debating if I could do it. Before I was preparing it, right? It was all in my head. It was a lot of anxiety. And, you know, once you have a platform, it's hard. And kind of being online is already in itself, setting yourself to be criticized, setting yourself up to be canceled. Culture is so scary. And we've all been there. We've all, you know, you probably feel it. I felt it before. And it's okay. For me, I tell myself every day, I call my anxiety every day and just be like, you know, but if you don't speak your truth, who will? There's only one version of the truth that you can speak, and that's yours. It does not have to be real for everyone else. Believe in yourself, kind of really be true to yourself. And once it comes out or whatever it is, it's okay to own up to it if it's a mistake. And down the line, if you don't agree with it anymore, it's okay for people to change. And I think the biggest thing is just owning up to it, really kind of leaning into it and embracing it that, oh, I'm human too. I might have a camera and a YouTube channel, but I'm also human. And I will make mistakes. You know, I'll say something where people don't agree with me, and I'll probably act some way that people think I should be canceled. And I'm just hoping for the best that at least some of those followers or the audience or just anyone or friends who knows me and understands me will get it and will stick through it. And it's okay to live for the hopes of it all. You see what I did there?
Yeah.
For me, I really, again, love everything that Pim you share. Definitely resonate a lot with the things that we were discussing as well. Just, I feel like in this short period of time for me to know you, there's definitely one common thing that we are, and we as in Buddy Time, Migudi, Buddy Up, you know, our company is trying to achieve, which I believe it's also what you're trying to achieve as well, which is to help those who are looking to become a better person, sort of helping in our own way. For you, you're sharing your knowledge, you're helping people in a way that they can find a way to release their negative emotion and probably guide them to have a happier life, right? And that's a very, I would say, not everyone can do that. It takes a lot to sit there and listen, absorb the energy, and, you know, it's doing the good thing for other people. But at the same time, you're also doing the things that you're really passionate about. And for us, we are also trying to help, especially the young adults, to, in a way, for them to explore what they really like, what really fulfills them in life. I think that's the common thing that we both share. And I would love to see, you know, maybe in the future we can, collaborate in some way to expand this kindness or expand this, let's say in a very cliche way, share this love with a broader audience, so that we can help impact today's society in a better way. And I really appreciate, Pim joining us today, sharing so much meaningful, valuable stuff that, again, like I've said this thousands of times already, I really resonate a lot. It reflects a lot on my own belief as well, and I really appreciate today's episode. Thank you so much, Pim.
And just before we wrap up, Pim, do you have any last words you'd like to share with the listeners, whether that's about your channel, what you do yourself, or anything at all?
I'll just speak to the people listening then, just that, a lot of the time we feel so alone. And that's just how I wanted to do all of these things, is that we understand. And especially if you're younger, go out there, try it. You don't have to feel so lost and be so inside yourself. Be lost outside. Sometimes you need to get to know the world, be lost in the world, navigate the whole world first. And it's easier to navigate what's inside. You have the experiences, you will be able to do anything you want to do, and just dream big, and you'll see where it takes you. Take the courage and just kind of like manage your anxiety, and if all of these things don't work out, just start again. It's so much worse in your head, I promise you that. So really just bring yourself out there. And if you need someone to understand you, there's Goody Time, there's Pimchology, and we're always here to understand you and listen. So don't hesitate to tune in, reach out, and, just be you.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well said. Well said.
And that wraps up today's episode of Buddy Time. I hope this conversation with Pim inspired you to prioritize self-love and self-care while exploring how understanding your mind can shape the future you want. Remember, taking small steps today can lead to big changes tomorrow. So be kind to yourself and keep growing. Thanks for tuning in, and as always, we'll catch you next time with more insights and stories to help you on your journey. Take care and see you soon!